May our Father, Messiah, and the Holy Spirit with us. Fuck, easy to do this. You guys can hear me better. Turn this fan off real fast. But, peace and love, family. I am on 11. Let's go. Let's finish Kings. King Solomon loved many foreign women in addition to Pharaoh's daughter, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Phoenician, and Hittite women, from the nations of which our Father in heaven has said to the Israelites, none of you shall join them, and none of them shall join you, lest they turn your heart away to follow their mighty ones. Such Solomon clung to in love. He had 700 royal wives and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away in his old age. His wives turned away Solomon's heart after other mighty ones, and he was not as wholeheartedly devoted to our Father in heaven, his Elohim, as his father David had been. Solomon followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Phoenicians, and Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did what was displeasing to our Father in heaven, and did not remain loyal to our Father in heaven like his father David. At that time, Solomon built a shrine for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill near Jerusalem, and one for Melech, the abomination of the Ammonites. And he did the same for all his foreign wives who offered and sacrificed to their mighty ones. Our Father in heaven was angry with Solomon because his heart turned away from our Father in heaven, the Elohim of Israel, who had appeared to him twice and had commanded him about this matter, not to follow other mighty ones. He did not obey what our Father in heaven had commanded. And our Father in heaven said to Solomon, because you are guilty of this, you have not kept my covenant and the laws which I enjoined upon you, I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your servants. But for the sake of your father David, I will not do it in your lifetime. I will tear it away from your son. However, I will not tear away the whole kingdom. I will give your son one tribe for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. So our Father in heaven raised up an adversary against Solomon, the Edomite Hadad, who was of the royal family of Edom. When David was in Edom, Joab, the army commander, went up to bury the slain, and he killed every male in Edom, for Joab and all Israel stayed there for 6 months until he had killed off every male in Edom. But Hadad, together with some Edomite men, servants of his father, escaped and headed for Mitzrayim. Hadad was in Egypt. Hadad was then a young boy setting out from Midian. They came to Paran. And took along with them men from Paran. Thus they came to Egypt, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who gave him a house, assigned a food allowance to him, and granted him an estate. Pharaoh took a great liking to Hadad and gave him his sister-in-law, the sister of Queen Tahpenes, as wife. The sister of Tahpenes bore him a son, Genubath. Tahpenes weaned him in Pharaoh's palace, and Genubath remained in Pharaoh's palace among the sons of Pharaoh. When Hadad heard in Egypt that David had been laid to rest with his fathers, and that Joab, the army commander, was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, give me leave to go to my own country. Pharaoh replied, what do you lack with me, that you want to go to your own country? But he said, nevertheless, give me leave to go. Another adversary that Elohim raised up against Solomon was Rezon, son of Eliada, who had fled from his master, King Hadadezer of Zobah. When David was slaughtering them, he gathered men about him and became captain over a troop. They went to Damascus and settled there, and they established a kingdom in Damascus. He was an adversary of Israel all the days of Solomon. Adding to the trouble caused by Hadad, he repudiated the authority of Israel and reigned over Aram. Jeroboam, son of Nebat, an Ephraimite of Zeradah, the son of a widow whose name was Zerah, was in Solomon's service. He raised his hand against the king. The circumstances under which he raised his hand against the king were as follows. Solomon built the Milo and repaired the breach of the city of his father. David, this Jeroboam, was an able man, and when Solomon saw that the young man was a capable worker, he appointed him over all the forced labor of the house of Joseph. During that time, Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, and the prophet Ahiah of Shiloh met him on the way. He had put on a new robe, and when the two were alone in the open country, Ahiah took hold of the new robe he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. Take 10 pieces, he said to Jeroboam, for thus said our Father in heaven, the Elohim of Israel, I am about to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hands, and I will give you 10 tribes, but one tribe shall remain his, for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city that I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, for they have forsaken me. They have worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Phoenicians, Jamash, the mighty one of Moab, and Milcom, the mighty one of the Ammonites. They have not walked in my ways, or done what is pleasing to me, or kept my laws and rules, as his father David did. However, I will not take the entire kingdom away from him, but will keep him as ruler as long as he lives, for the sake of my servant David, whom I chose, and who kept my commandments and my laws. But I will take the kingship out of the hands of his son, and give it to you, the 10 tribes. To his son I will give one tribe, so that there may be a lamp. Sorry, I was praying. To his son I will give one tribe, so that there may be a lamp for my servant David before me in Jerusalem, the city where I have chosen to establish my name, which you have been chosen by me. Reign, chosen by me. Reign wherever you hope, and you shall be king over Israel. If you heed all that I command you, and walk in my ways, and do what is right in my sight, keeping my laws and commandments, as my servant David did, then I will be with you, and I will build for you a lasting dynasty, as I did for David. I hereby give Israel to you, and I will chastise David's descendants for that sin. Though not forever, Solomon sought to put Jeroboam to death, but Jeroboam promptly fled to King Shishak of Mitzrayim, and he remained in Mitzrayim to the death of Solomon. Mitzrayim is Egypt. The other events of Solomon's reign and all his actions and his wisdom are recorded in the book of the Annals of Solomon. The length of Solomon's reign in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. Solomon slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of his father David, and his son Rehoboam succeeded him as king. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for Israel had come to Shechem to acclaim him as king. Jeroboam, son of Nebat, learned of it while he was still in Mitzrayim, for Jeroboam had fled from King Solomon and had settled in Mitzrayim. They sent for him, and Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam as follows: Your father made our yoke heavy. Now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke which your father laid on us, and we will serve you. He answered them, Go away for 3 days, and then come back to me. So the people went away. King Rehoboam took counsel with the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. He said, what answer do you advise me to give to this people? They answered him, If you will be a servant to those people today and serve them, and if you respond to them with kind words, they will be your servants always. But he ignored the advice that the elders gave him and took counsel with the young men who had grown up with him and were serving him. What, he asked, do you advise that we reply to the people who said to me, Lighten the yoke that your father placed upon us? And the young men who had grown up with him answered, Speak thus to the people who said to you, Your father made our yoke heavy. Now you make it lighter for us. Say to them, My little finger is thicker than my father's loins. My father imposed a heavy yoke on you, and I will add to your yoke. My father flogged you with whips, but I will flog you with scorpions. Jeroboam and other people came to Rehoboam on the 3rd day, since the king had told them, Come back on the 3rd day. The king answered the people harshly, ignoring the advice that the elders had given him. He spoke to them in accordance with the advice of the young men and said, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father flogged you with whips, but I will flog you with scorpions. The king did not listen to the people, for our Father in heaven had brought it about in order to fulfill the promise that our Father in heaven had made through Ahiah, the Shilonite, to Jeroboam, son of Nebat. When all Israel saw that the king had not listened to them, the people answered the king, We have no portion in David, no share in Yeshai's son. To your tents, O Israel, now look to your own house, O David. So the Israelites returned to their homes. But Rehoboam continued to reign over the Israelites who lived in the towns of Yehudah. King Jeroboam sent Adoram, who was in charge of the forced labor, but all Israel pelted him to death with stones. Thereupon King Rehoboam hurriedly mounted his chariot and fled to Jerusalem. Thus Israel revolted against the house of David, as is still the case. Wow. When all Israel heard that, and that could be considered as in the Messiah as well, because it says they revolted against the house of David from this point right here, as is still the case. It says, when all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent messengers and summoned, because, Messiah is the root of David. When all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent messengers and summoned him to the assembly and made him king over all Israel. Only the tribe of Yehudah remained loyal to the house of David. On his return to Jerusalem, Rehoboam mustered all the house of Yehudah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 picked warriors to fight against the house of Israel in order to restore the kingship to Rehoboam, son of Solomon. But the word of Elohim came to Shemaiah, the man of Elohim, saying to King Rehoboam, son of Solomon, of Yehuda and to all the house of Yehuda and Benjamin and the rest of the people. Thus said our Father in heaven, you shall not set out to make war on your kinsmen, the Israelites. Let every man return to his home. For this thing has been brought about by me that heeded the word of our Father in heaven and turned back in accordance with the word of our Father in heaven. Jeroboam fortified Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and resided there. He moved out from there and fortified Penuel. Jeroboam said to himself, now the kingdom may well return to the house of David if these people still go up to offer sacrifices at the house of our Father in heaven in Jerusalem. The heart of these people will turn back to their master, King Rehoboam of Yehuda. They will kill me and go back to King Rehoboam of Yehuda. So the king took counsel and made 2 golden calves. He said to the people, you have been going up to Jerusalem long enough. This is your mighty one, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim. He set up one in Bethel and placed the other in Dan. That proved to be a cause of guilt, for the people went to worship the calf at Bethel and the one at Dan. He also made called places and appointed priests from the ranks of the people who were not of Levite descent. He stationed at Bethel the priests of the shrines that he had appointed to sacrifice of the calves that he had made, and Jeroboam established a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month in imitation of the festival in Yehuda. He established one at Bethel, and he ascended the altar there on the 15th day of the 8th month, the month in which he had contrived of his own mind to establish a festival for the Israelites. Jeroboam ascended the altar that he had made in Bethel. As he ascended the altar to present an offering, a man of Elohim arrived at Bethel from Yehuda at the command of our Father in heaven. While Jeroboam was standing on the altar to present the offering, the man of Elohim at the command of our Father in heaven cried out against the altar, O altar, thus said our Father in heaven, a son shall be born to the house of David, Josiah by name, and he shall slaughter upon you the priests of the shrines who bring offerings upon you, and human bones shall be burned upon you. He gave a portent on that day, saying, here is the portent that our Father in heaven has decreed. This altar shall break apart, and the ashes on it shall be spilled. When the king heard that the men of Elohim had proclaimed against the altar in Bethel, Jeroboam stretched out his arm above the altar and cried, seize him. But the arm that he stretched out against him became rigid, and he could not draw it back. The altar broke apart, and its ashes were spilled. The very portent that the man of Elohim had announced at our Father in heaven's command. Then the king spoke up and said to the men of Elohim, please entreat our Father in heaven, your Elohim, and pray for me that I may be able to draw back my arm. The man of Elohim entreated our Father in heaven, and the king was able to draw his arm back. It became as it was before. The king said to the man of Elohim, come with me to my house and have some refreshment, and I shall give you a gift. But the man of Elohim replied to the king, even if you give me half your wealth, I will not go in with you, nor will I eat bread or drink water in this place. For so I was commanded by the word of our Father in heaven. You shall eat no bread and drink no water, nor shall you go back by the road by which you came. So he left by another road, and did not go back to the road on which he can't come to Bethel. There was an old prophet living in Bethel, and his son, it says in Hebrew, his son came and told him all the things that the man of Elohim had done that day in Bethel, and the words that he had spoken to the king when they told it to their father. Their father said to them, which road did he leave by? His sons had seen the road, and his sons showed the road taken by the man of Elohim who had come from Yehuda, saddled the donkey for me. He said to his sons, they saddled the donkey for him, and he mounted it and rode after the man of Elohim. He came upon him, sitting under a terebinth, and said to him, are you the man of Elohim who came from Yehuda? Yes, I am, he answered. Come home with me, he said, and have something to eat. He replied, I may not go back with you and enter your I may not go back with you and enter your home, and I may not eat bread or drink water in this place. The order I received by the word of our Father in heaven was, you shall not eat bread or drink water there, nor shall you return by the road on which you came. This is a great lesson for just learning. I am a prophet too, said the other, and an angel said to me by command of our Father in heaven, bring him back with you to your house, that he may eat bread and drink water. He was lying to him, so he went back with him, and he ate bread and drank water in his house. While they were sitting at the table, the word of our Father in heaven came to the prophet who had brought him back. He cried out to the man of Elohim who had come from Yehuda. Thus said our Father in heaven, because you have flaunted the word of our Father in heaven and have not observed what our Father in heaven, your Elohim, commanded you, but have gone back and eaten bread and drink water in the place of which he said to you, do not eat bread or drink water there. Your corpse shall not come to the grave. Your corpse shall not come to the grave of your fathers. After he had eaten bread and had drank and he saddled the donkey for him for the prophet whom he had brought back. He set out, and a lion came upon him on the road and killed him. His corpse lay on the road with the donkey standing beside it, and the lion also standing beside the corpse. Some men who passed by saw the corpse lying on the road, and the lion standing beside the corpses. They went and told it, and they went and told it in the town where the old prophet lived. And when the prophet who had brought him back from the road heard it, he said, that is the man of Elohim who flaunted our Father in heaven's command. Our Father in heaven gave him over to the lion, which mauled him and killed him in accordance with the word that our Father in heaven had spoken to him. He said to his son, saddle the donkey for me. And they did so. He set out and found the corpse lying on the road with the donkey and the lion standing beside the corpse. The lion had not eaten the corpse, nor had it mauled the donkey. The prophet lifted up the corpse of the man of Elohim, laid it on the donkey, and brought it back. It was brought to the town of the old prophet for lamentation and burial. He laid the corpse in his own burial place, and they lamented over it. Alas, my brother, after burying him, he said to his sons, when I die, bury me in the grave where the man of Elohim lies buried. Lay my bones beside him, for what he announced by the word of our Father in heaven against the altar in Bethel and against all the cult places in the towns of Samaria shall surely come true. Even after this incident, Jeroboam did not turn back from his evil way, but kept on appointing priests for the shrines from the ranks of the people. He ordained as priests of the shrines any who so desired, thereby the house of Jeroboam incurred guilt to their utter annihilation from the face of the earth. At that time, Abiah, a son of Jeroboam, fell sick. Jeroboam said to his wife, go and disguise yourself so that you will not be recognized as Jeroboam's wife, and go to Shiloh. The prophet Ahiah lives there, the one who predicted that I will be king over this people. Take with you 10 loaves, some wafers, and a jug of honey, and go to him. He will tell you what will happen to the boy. Jeroboam's wife did so. She left and went to Shiloh and came to the house of Ahiah. Now Ahiah could not see, for his eyes had become sightless with age, but our Father in heaven had said to Ahiah, Jeroboam's wife is coming to inquire of you concerning her son who was sick. Speak to her thus and thus. When she arrives, she will be in disguise. Ahiah heard the sound of her feet as she came through the door, and he said, come in, wife of Jeroboam, why are you disguised? I have a harsh message for you. Go tell Jeroboam, thus said our Father in heaven, that Elohim Israel. I raised you up from among the people and made you a ruler over my people Israel. I tore away the kingdom from the house of David and gave it to you. But you have not been like my servant David, who kept my commandments and followed me with all his heart, doing only what was right in my sight. You have acted worse than all those who preceded you. You have gone and made for yourself other mighty ones and modern images to vex me, and me you have cast behind your back. Therefore I will bring disaster upon the house of Jeroboam, and I will cut off from Jeroboam every male bond and free in Israel. I will sweep away the house of Jeroboam utterly as dung is swept away. Anyone belonging to Jeroboam who dies in the town shall be devoured by dogs, and anyone who dies in the open country shall be eaten by the birds of the air, for our Father in heaven has spoken. As for you, go back home. As soon as you set foot in the town, the child will die, and all Israel shall lament over him and bury him. He alone of Jeroboam's family shall be brought to burial. For in him alone of the house of Jeroboam has some devotion been found to our Father in heaven, to Elohim Israel. Moreover, our Father in heaven will raise up a king over Israel who will destroy the house of Jeroboam this day. And even now, our Father in heaven will strike Israel until it sways like a reed in water. He will uproot Israel from this good land that he gave to their fathers, and will scatter them beyond the Euphrates, because they have provoked our Father in heaven by the sacred posts that they have made for themselves. He will forsake Israel because of the sins that Jeroboam committed and led Israel to commit. Jeroboam's wife got up and left, and she went to Tirzah. As soon as she stepped over the threshold of her house, the child died. They buried him, and all Israel lamented over him, in accordance with the word that our Father in heaven had spoken through his servant the prophet Ahiah. The other events of Jeroboam's reign, how he fought and how he ruled, and recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Jeroboam reigned 22 years. Then he slept with his fathers, and his sons Nadab succeeded him as king. Meanwhile, Rehoboam, son of Solomon, had become king in Yehuda. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he became king, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city our Father in heaven had chosen out of all the tribes of Israel to establish his name there. His mother's name was Naamah the Ammonitess. Yehuda did what was displeasing to our Father in heaven, and angered him more than their fathers had done by the sins that they committed. They too built for themselves shrines, pillars, and sacred posts on every high hill, and under every leafy tree. There were also male prostitutes in the land. Yehuda imitated all the abhorrent practices of the nations that our Father in heaven had dispossessed before the Israelites. In the 5th year of King Rehoboam, King Shishak of Mitzrayim marched against Jerusalem and carried off the treasures of the house of our Father in heaven, and the treasures of the royal palace. He carried off everything. He even carried off all the golden shields that Solomon had made. King Rehoboam had bronze shields made instead, and he entrusted them to the officers of the guard who guarded the entrance to the royal palace. Whenever the king went into the house of our Father in heaven, the guards would carry them and then bring them back to the armory of the guards. The other events of Rehoboam's reign and all his actions are recorded in the annals of the kings of Yehuda. There was continual war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Rehoboam slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. His mother's name was Naamah the Ammonitess. His son Abayam succeeded him as king. In the 18th year of King Jeroboam, son of Nebat, Abayam became king over Yehuda. He reigned 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, daughter of Absalom. He continued in all the sins that his father before him had committed. He was not wholehearted with our Father in heaven, his Elohim, like his father David. Yet for the sake of David, our Father in heaven, his Elohim, gave him a lamp in Jerusalem. Wow. Jerusalem is Jerusalem. By raising up his descendant after him and by preserving Jerusalem, for David had done what was displeasing to our Father. For David had done what was displeasing. For David had done what was pleasing to our Father in heaven, and had returned throughout his life from all that he had commanded him, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. There was war between Abayam and Jeroboam all the days of his life. The other events of Ahiam's reign and all his actions are recorded in the annals of the kings of Yehuda. Abayam slept with his fathers. He was buried in the city of David, and his son Asa succeeded him as king. In the 20th year of King Jeroboam of Israel, Asa became king over Yehuda. He reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, daughter of Absalom. Asa did what was pleasing to our Father in heaven, as his father David had done. He expelled the male prostitutes from the land, and he removed all the idols that his ancestors had made. He also deposed his mother Maacah from the rank of queen mother, because she had made an abominable thing for the goddess of Ashtaroth. Asa cut down her abominable thing and burnt it in the Wadi Kidron. The shrines indeed were not abolished. However, Asa was wholehearted with our Father in heaven, his Elohim, all his life. He brought into the house of our Father in heaven all the consecrated things of his father, and his own consecrated things, silver, gold, and utensils. There was war between Asa and King Baasha of Israel all their days. King Baasha of Israel advanced against Yehuda, and he fortified Ramah to prevent anyone belonging to King Asa from going out or coming in. So Asa took all the silver and gold that remained in the treasuries of the house of our Father in heaven, as well as the treasuries of the royal palace, and he entrusted them to his officials. King Asa sent them to King Ben-Hadad, son of Tabariman, son of Hazan of Aram, who resided in Damascus, with this message: there is a pact between you and me, and between your father and my father. I herewith send you a gift of silver and gold. Go and break your pact with King Baasha of Israel, so that he may withdraw from me. Ben-Hadad responded to King Asa's request. He sent his army commanders against the towns of Israel and captured Aijan, Dan, Abel, Beth, Makkah, and all Chinarath, as well as all the land of Naphtali. When Baasha heard about it, he stopped fortifying Ramah and remained in Tirzah. Then King Asa mustered all Yehuda with no exemptions, and they carried away the stones and timber with which Baasha had fortified Ramah. With these, King Asa fortified Geba of Benjamin and Mizpah. All the other events of Asa's reign and all his exploits and all his actions in the towns that he fortified are recorded in the annals of the kings of Yehuda. However, in his old age, he suffered from a foot alignment. Asa slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of his father David. His son Jehoshaphat succeeded him as king. Nadab, son of Jeroboam, had become king over Israel in the 2nd year of King Asa of Yehuda, and he reigned over Israel for 2 years. He did what was displeasing to our Father in heaven. He continued in the ways of his father, in the sins which he caused Israel to commit. Then Baasha, son of Ahiah of the house of Issachar, conspired against him, and Baasha struck him down at Gibbethon of the Philistines, while Nadab and all Israel were laying siege to Gibbethon. Baasha killed him in the 3rd year of King Asa of Yehuda and became king in his stead. As soon as he became king, he struck down all the house of Jeroboam. He did not spare a single soul belonging to Jeroboam until he destroyed it, in accordance with the word that our Father in heaven has spoken through his servant, the prophet Ahiah the Shilonite, because of the sins which Jeroboam committed and which he caused Israel to commit, thereby vexing our Father in heaven, the Elohim of Israel. The other events of Nadab's reign and all his actions are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. There was a war between Asa and King Baasha of Israel all their days. In the 3rd year of King Asa of Yehuda, Baasha, son of Ahiah, became king in Tirzah. over all Israel for 24 years. He did what was displeasing to our Father in heaven. He followed the ways of Jeroboam and the sins which he caused Israel to commit. The word of our Father in heaven came to Jehu, son of Hananiah, against Baasha, because I lifted you up from the dust and made you a ruler over my people Israel, but you followed the way of Jeroboam and caused my people Israel to sin, and vexing me with their sins. I am going to sweep away Baasha and his house. I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Anyone belonging to Baasha who dies in the town shall be devoured by dogs, and anyone belonging to him who dies in the open country shall be devoured by the birds of the sky. The other events of Baasha's reign and his actions and his exploits are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Baasha slept with his fathers and was buried in Tirzah. His son Eli succeeded him as king, but the word of our Father in heaven had come through the prophet Jehu, son of Hananiah, against Baasha and against his house, that it would fare like the house of Jeroboam, which he himself had struck down because of all the evil he did, which was displeasing to our Father in heaven, vexing him with his deeds. In the 26th year of King Asa, in the 26th year of King Asa of Yehuda, Eliah, son of Baasha, became king over Israel at Tirzah for 2 years. His officer Zimri, commander of half the chariotry, committed treason against him while he was at Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arza, who was in charge of the palace at Tirzah. Zimri entered, struck him down, and killed him. He succeeded him as king in the 26th year of King Asa of Yehuda. No sooner had he become king and ascended the throne than he struck down all the house of Baasha. He did not leave a single male of his, nor any kinsman or friend. Thus Zimri destroyed all the house of Baasha in accordance with the word that our Father in heaven had spoken through the prophet Jehu, because of the sinful acts which Baasha and his son Eli committed, and which they caused Israel to commit, vexing our Father in heaven, the Elohim of Israel, with their false mighty ones. The other events of Eliah's reign and all his actions are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. During the 27th year of King Asa of Yehuda, Zimri reigned in Tirzah for 7 days. At the time the troops were encamped at Gibbethon of the Philistines, when the troops who were encamped there learned that Zimri had committed treason and had struck down the king that very day in the camp, all Israel acclaimed the army commander Amri, king over Israel. Amri and all Israel then withdrew from Gibbethon and laid siege to Tirzah. When Zimri saw that the town was taken, he went into the citadel of the royal palace and burned down the royal palace over himself, and so he died because of the sins which he committed and caused Israel to commit, doing what was displeasing to our Father in heaven, and following the ways of Jeroboam. The other events of Zimri's reign and the treason which he committed are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Then the people of Israel split into 2 factions. A part of the people followed Timni, son of Ginath, to make him king, and the other part followed Imri. Those who followed Imri proved stronger than those who followed Timni, son of Ginath. Timni died, and Imri became king in the 31st year of King Asa of Yehuda. Amri became king over Israel for 12 years. He reigned in Tirzah 6 years. Then he brought the hill of Samaria from Shamar for 2 talents of silver. He built a town on the hill, and in the town which he built Samaria after Shamar, the owner of the hill, Amri did what was displeasing to our Father in heaven. He was worse than all who preceded him. He followed all the ways of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and the sins which he committed and caused Israel to commit, vexing our Father in heaven, the Elohim of Israel. The other events of Amri's reign and his actions and the exploits he performed are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Amri slept with his fathers and was buried in Samaria, and his son Ahab succeeded him as king. Ahab, son of Amri, became king over Israel in the 38th year of King Asa of Yehuda, and Ahab, son of Amri, reigned over Israel and Samaria for 22 years. Ahab, son of Amri, did what was displeasing to our Father in heaven, more than all who preceded him. Not content to follow the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, he took his wife Jezebel, daughter of King Ethabal of the Phoenicians, and he went and served Baal and worshipped him. He erected an altar to Baal in the temple of Baal, which he built in Samaria. Ahab also made a sacred post. Ahab did more to vex our Father in heaven, the Elohim of Israel, than all the kings of Israel who preceded him. During his reign, Hael, the Bethelite, fortified Jericho. He laid his foundations at the cost of Abiram, his firstborn, and set his gates in place at the cost of Sekub, his youngest, in accordance with the words that our Father in heaven had spoken through Yahshua, son of Nun. Elijah the Tishbite, an inhabitant of Gilead, said to Ahab, as our Father in heaven lives, the Elohim of Israel, whom I serve, there will be no dew or rain except at my bidding. This one about to get real. The word of our Father in heaven came to him, leave this place, turn eastward, and go into hiding by the Wadi Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. You will drink from the Wadi, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. Amen. He proceeded to do as our father in heaven had bidden. He went and he stayed by the Wadi Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat every morning and every evening, and he drank from the Wadi. After some time, the Wadi dried up because there was no rain in the land, and the word of our father in heaven came to him, go at once to Sarabeth of Zidon and stay there. I have designated a widow there to feed you. So he went at once to Saraphath. When he came to the entrance of the town, a widow was there gathering wood. He called out to her, please bring me a little water in your pitcher and let me drink. As she went to fetch it, he called out to her, please bring along a piece of bread for me. As our father in heaven, Elohim, lives, she replied, I have nothing baked, nothing but a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. I'm just gathering a couple of sticks so that I can go home and prepare for me and my son. We shall eat and then we shall die. Don't be afraid, said Elijah to her. Go and do as you have said, but first make me a small cake from what you have there and bring it out to me. Then make some for yourself and your son, for thus said our Father in heaven, the Elohim Israel, the jar of flour shall not give out, and the jug of oil shall not fail until the day that our Father in heaven sends rain upon the ground. She went and did as Elijah had spoken, and he and her household had food for a long time. The jar of flour did not give out, nor did the jug of oil fail, just as our Father in heaven had spoken through Elijah. Amen. After a while, the son of the mistress of the house fell sick, and his illness grew more. And his illness grew more until he had no breath left in him. She said to Elijah, what harm have I done you, O man of Elohim, that you should come here to recall my son and cause the death of my son? Give me the boy. He said to her, and taking him from her arms, he carried him to the upper chamber where he was staying and laid him down on his own bed. He cried out to our Father in heaven and said, O our Father in heaven, my Elohim, will you bring calamity upon this widow whose guest I am, and let her son die? Then he stretched out over the child 3 times and cried out to our Father in heaven, saying, O our Father in heaven, my Elohim, let this child's life return to his body. Our Father in heaven heard Elijah's plea. The child's life returned to his body, and he revived. Elijah picked up the child and brought him down from the upper room into the main room and gave him to his mother. See, and Elijah, your son is alive. And the woman answered Elijah, now I know that you are a man of Elohim, and that the word of our Father in heaven is surely in your mouth. Much later, in the 3rd year, the word of our Father in heaven came to Elijah. Go appear before Ahab, then I will send rain upon the earth. Thereupon Elijah set out to appear before Ahab. The famine was severe in Samaria. Ahab had summoned Obadiah, the steward of the palace. Obadiah revered our Father in heaven greatly. When Jezebel was killing off the prophets of our Father in heaven, Obadiah had taken 100 prophets and hidden them 50 to a cave and provided them with food and drink. And Ahab had said to Obadiah, go through the land to all the springs of water, into all the wadis. Perhaps we shall find some grass to keep horses and mules alive, so that we are not left without beasts. They divided the country between them to explore it, Ahab going alone in one direction and Obadiah going alone in another direction. Obadiah was on a roam when Elijah suddenly confronted him. Obadiah recognized him and flung himself on his face, saying, is that you, my master Elijah? Yes, it is. Yes, it is I, he answered. Go tell your master, Elijah is here. Go tell your master, Elijah is here. But he said, what wrong have I done that you should hand your servant over to Ahab to be killed? As our Father in heaven, your Elohim lives, there is no nation or kingdom to which my master has not sent to look for you. And when they said he is not here, he made that kingdom or nation swear that you could not be found. And now you say, go tell my master, go tell your master Elijah is here. When I leave you, the spirit of our Father in heaven will carry you off. I don't know where and when I come and tell Ahab, and he does not find. When I leave you, the spirit of our Father in heaven will carry you off. I don't know where. And when I come and tell Ahab, and he does not find you, he will kill me. Yet your servant has revered our Father in heaven from my youth. My master has surely been told what I did when Jezebel was killing the prophets of our Father in heaven. How I hid 100 of the prophets of our Father in heaven, 50 men to a cave, and provided them with food and drink. And now you say, go tell your master Elijah is here, why he will kill me. Elijah replies, as our Father in heaven of hosts lives, whom I serve, I will appear before him this very day. Obadiah went to find Ahab and informed him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When Ahab caught sight of Elijah, Ahab said to him, is that you troubler of Israel? He retorted, it is not I who have brought trouble on Israel, but you and your father's house, by forsaking the commandments of our Father in heaven and going after the Baalim. Now summon all Israel to join me at Mount Carmel, together with the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. Ahab sent orders to all the Israelites to gather the prophets at Mount Carmel. Elijah approached all the people and said, how long will you keep hopping between 2 opinions? If our Father in heaven is Elohim, follow him, and if Baal, follow him. But the people answered him not a word. Then Elijah said to the people, I am the only prophet of our Father in heaven left, while the prophets of Baal are 450. Let 2 young bulls be given to us. Let them choose one bull, cut it up, and lay it on the wood, but let them not apply fire. I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood. Him saying that he was the only prophet as well left of our Father in heaven is really sad, because that just means that he was the only one left being obedient to our Father in heaven, listening to all his commandments. And this is a blessing in itself, because if we didn't even have him, we could have died off in these moments in times. Brothers and sisters, understand this. Then Elijah said to the people, I am the only prophet of our Father in heaven left, while the prophets of Baal are 450 men. Let 2 young bulls be given to us. Let them choose one bull, cut it up, and lay it on the wood, but let them not apply fire. I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood. And when I apply fire, you will then invoke your mighty one by name, and I will invoke our Father in heaven by name. And let us agree. The mighty one who responds with fire, that one is Elohim. And other people answered, very good. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one bull and prepare it first, for you are the majority. Invoke your mighty one by name, but apply no fire. They took the bull that was given them, they prepared it, and invoked Baal by name from morning until noon, shouting, O Baal, and answer us. But there was no sound, and none who responded. So they performed the hopping dance about the altar that had been set up. When noon came, Elijah mocked them, saying, shout louder. After all, he is a god, but he may be in conversation, he may be detained, or he may be on a journey, or perhaps he is asleep and will wake up. So they shouted louder and gashed themselves with knives and spears according to their practice, until the blood streamed over them. When noon passed, they kept raving until the hour of presenting the meal offering. Still there was no sound, and none who responded or heeded. Then Elijah said to all the people, come closer to me. And all the people came closer to him. He repaired the damaged altar of our Father in heaven. Then Elijah took 12 stones, corresponding to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom Jacob is Jacob, to whom the word of our Father in heaven had come. Israel shall be your name. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of our Father in heaven. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of our Father in heaven. Around the altar he made a trench large enough for two sails of seed. He laid out the wood, and he cut up the bull and laid it on the wood. And he said, fill 4 jars with water and pour it over the burnt offering and the wood. Then he said, do it a second time. And they did it a second time. Do it a third time, he said, and they did it a third time. The water ran down around the altar, and even the trench was filled with water. When it was time to present the meal offering, the prophet Elijah came forward and said, O our Father in heaven, Elohim, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are Elohim and Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things, and that I have done all these things at your bidding. Answer me, O our Father in heaven, answer me, that this people may know that you, O our Father in heaven, are Elohim, for you have turned their hearts backward. Then fire from our Father in heaven descended and consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, and the earth, and it licked up the water that was up in the trench. When they saw this, all the people flung themselves on their faces and cried out, our Father in heaven alone is Elohim. Our Father in heaven alone is Elohim. Then Elijah said to them, seize the prophets of Baal. Let not a single one of them get away. They seized them, and Elijah took them down to the Wadi Kishon and slaughtered them there. Elijah said to Ahab, go up, eat and drink, for there is a rumbling of approaching rain. And Ahab went up to eat and drink. Elijah meanwhile climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, crouched on the ground, and put his face between his knees. And he said to his servant, go up and look toward the sea. He went up and looked and reported, there is nothing. 7 times Elijah said, go back. And the 7th time the servant reported, the cloud as small as a man's hand is rising in the west. Then Elijah said, go say to Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you. Meanwhile the sky grew black with clouds, there was wind, and a heavy downpour fell. Ahab mounted his chariot and drove off to Jezreel. The hand of our Father in heaven had come upon Elijah. He tied up his skirts and ran in front of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. And when Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had put all the prophets to the sword, Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, thus and more may by this time tomorrow, I have not made you like one of them. Frightened, he fled at once for his life. He came to Beersheba. When Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had put all the prophets to the sword, Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, Thus and more may the mighty ones do, if by this time tomorrow I have not made you like one of them. Frightened, he fled at once for his life. He came to Beersheba, which is in Jehudah, and left his servant there. He himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush and sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. Enough, he cried, now, our Father in heaven, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. He lay down and fell asleep under a broom bush. Suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, arise and eat. He looked about, and there beside his head was a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of our Father in heaven came a second time and touched him and said, arise and eat, or the journey will be too much for you. He arose and ate and drank, and with the strength From that mill he walked 40 days and 40 nights as far as the mountain of Elohim and Horeb. There he went into a cave, and there he spent the night. Then the word of our Father in heaven came to him. He said to him, Why are you here, Elijah? He replied, I am moved by zeal for our Father in heaven, the Elohim of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, turned down your altars, and put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they are out to take my life. Come out, he called, and stand on the mountain before our Father in heaven. And lo, our Father in heaven passed by. There was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks by the power of our Father in heaven. But our Father in heaven was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake. But our Father in heaven was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire. But our Father in heaven was not in the fire. And after the fire, a soft murmuring sound, a still small voice. Just let you know that our Father in heaven is that still small voice. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his mantle about his face and went out instead of the entrance of the cave. Then a voice addressed him. Why are you here, Elijah? He answered, I am moved by zeal for our Father in heaven, Elohim of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, tore down your altars, and have put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they are out to take my life. Our Father in heaven said to him, Go back by the way you came, and onto the wilderness of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael as king of Aram. Also anoint Yehu, son of Nimshi, as king of Israel, and anoint Elijah, son of Shaphat of Abel, Maholah, to succeed you as a prophet. Whoever escapes the sword of Hazael shall be slain by Yehu, and whoever escapes the sword of Jehu shall be slain by Elijah. I will leave in Israel only 7,000. Every knee that I will leave in Israel only 7,000 prophets. Only 7,000. Every knee that has not knelt to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. Only 7,000. So 7,001 prophets in the land right now. He set up from there and came up upon Elijah, son of Shaphat, as he was flying. There were 12 yoke of oxen ahead of him, and he was with the 12. And he was with the 12. Elijah came over to him and threw his mantle over him. He left the oxen and ran after Elijah, saying, Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, and I will follow you. And he answered him, Go back. What have I done to you? He turned back from him and took the yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He boiled their meat with the gear of the oxen and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and followed Elijah and became his lieutenant. King Ben-Hadad of Aram gathered his whole army. 32 kings accompanied him with horses and chariots. He advanced against Samaria, laid siege to it, and attacked it. And he sent messengers to Ahab inside the city to say to him, Thus said Ben-Hadad, Your silver and gold are mine, and your beautiful wives and children are mine. The king of Israel replied, As you say, my master king, I and all I have are yours. Then the messengers came again and said, Thus said Ben-Hadad, when I sent you the order to give me your silver and gold and your wives and children, I meant that tomorrow at this time I will send my servants to you, and they will search your house and the houses of your courtiers, and would seize everything you prize and take it away. Then the king of Israel summoned all the elders of the land, and he said, See for yourselves how that man is bent on evil. For when he demanded my wives and my children, my silver and my gold, I did not refuse him. All the elders and all the people said, Do not obey and do not submit. So he said to Ben-Hadad's messengers, Tell my master the king all that you first demanded of your servant I shall do. But this thing I cannot do. The messengers went and reported this to him. Thereupon Ben-Hadad sent him this message. May the mighty ones do thus to me, and even more, if the dust of Samaria will provide even a handful for each of the men who follow me. The king of Israel replied, Tell him, let not him who girds on his sword boast like him who ungirds it. On hearing this reply, while he and the other kings were drinking together, Succoth commanded his followers, Advance, and they advanced against the city. Then a certain prophet went up to King Ahab of Israel and said, Thus said our Father in heaven, Do you see that great house? I will deliver it into your hands today, and you shall know that I am our Father in heaven, that I am my Father in heaven. Through whom? Asked Ahab. He answered, Thus said our Father in heaven, through the aids of the provisional governors. He asked, Who shall begin the battle? And he answered, You. So he mustered the aids of the provisional governors, 232 strong, and then he mustered all the troops, all the Israelites, 7,000 strong. They marched out at noon, while Ben-Hadad was drinking himself drunk. Okay. While he was drinking himself drunk at Succoth, together with the 32 kings allied with him, the aides of the provisional governors rushed out first. Ben-Hadad set scouts who told him, Some men have come out from Samaria. He said, if they have come out to surrender, take them alive. And if they have come out for battle, take them alive anyhow. But the others, the aides of the provisional governors, with the army behind them, had already rushed out of the city, and each of them struck down his opponent. The Arameans fled, and Israel pursued them. But King Ben-Hadad of Aram escaped on a horse with other horsemen. The king of Israel came out and attacked the horses and chariots, and inflicted a great defeat on the Arameans. Then the prophet approached the king of Israel and said to him, go keep up your efforts and consider well what you must do, for the king of Aram will attack you at the turn of the year. Now the ministers of the king of Aram said to him, their Elohim is an Elohim of mountains. That is why they got the better of us. But if we fight them in the plain, we will surely get the better of them. Do this, remove all the kings from their posts and appoint governors in their place. Then muster for yourself an army equal to the army you lost. Then muster for yourself an army equal to the army you lost. Horse for horse and chariot for chariot, and let us fight them in the plain, and we will surely get the better of them. He took their advice and acted accordingly. At the turn of the year, Ben-Hadad mustered the Arameans and advanced on effect to fight Israel. Now the Israelites had been mustered in provisions, and they went out against them. But when the Israelites encamped against them, they looked like two flocks of goats, while the Arameans covered the land. Then the man of Elohim approached and spoke to the king of Israel. Thus said our Father in heaven, because the Arameans have said, our Father in heaven is the Elohim of mountains, but he is not an Elohim of low lands. I will deliver that great host into your hands, and you shall know that I am our Father in heaven. For 7 days they were encamped opposite each other. On the seventh day the battle was joined, and the Israelites struck down 100,000 Aramean foot soldiers in one day. The survivors fled to Aphek inside the town, and the wall fell on the 27,000 survivors. Ben-Hadad also fled and took refuge inside the town. In an inner chamber his ministers said to him, we have heard that the kings of the house of Israel are magnanimous kings. Let us put sackcloth on our loins and ropes on our heads and surrender to the king of Israel. Perhaps he will spare your life. So they girded sackcloth on their loins and wound ropes around their heads, and came to the king of Israel and said, your servant Ben-Hadad says, I beg you, spare my life. He replied, is he still alive? He is my brother. The men divined his meaning and quickly caught the word from him, saying, yes, Ben-Hadad is your brother. Go bring him. He said. Ben-Hadad came out to him, and he invited him into his chariot. Ben-Hadad said to him, I will give back the towns that my father took from your father, and you may set up bazaars for yourself in Damascus, as my father did in Samaria. And I, for my part, said, Ahab will let you go home under these terms. So he made a treaty with him and dismissed him. A certain man, a disciple of the prophets, said to another, at the word of our Father in heaven, strike me. But the man refused to strike him. He said to him, because you have not obeyed our Father in heaven, a lion will strike you dead as soon as you leave me. And when he left, a lion came upon him and killed him. Then he met another man and said, come strike me. So the man struck him and wounded him. Then the prophet disguised by a cloth over his eyes went and waited for the king by the road. As the king passed by, he cried out to the king and said, your servant went out into the thick of the battle. Suddenly a man came over and brought a man to me, saying, guard this man. If he is missing, it will be your life for his, or you will have to pay a talent of silver. While your servant was busy here and there, the man got away. The king of Israel responded, you have your verdict. You pronounced it yourself. Quickly he removed the cloth from his eyes, and the king recognized him as one of the prophets. He said to him, thus said our Father in heaven, because you have set free the man whom I doomed, your life shall be forfeit for his life, and your people for his people. This spirited and sullen, the king left for home and came to Samaria. Wow, this is real. The following events occurred sometime afterward. Naboth the Jezreelite owned a vineyard in Jezreel adjoining the palace of King Ahab of Samaria. Ahab said to Naboth, give me your vineyard so that I may have it as a vegetable garden, since it is right next to my palace. I will give you a better vineyard in exchange, or if you prefer, I will pay you the price in money. But Naboth replied, our Father in heaven forbid that I should give up to you what I have inherited from my fathers. Ahab went home dispirited and sullen because of the answer that Naboth the Jezreelite had given him. I will not give up to you what I have inherited from my fathers. He lay down on his bed and turned away his face, and he would not eat. His wife Jezebel came to him and asked him, Why are you so dispirited that you won't eat? So he told her, I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite, and proposed to him, sell me your vineyard for money, or if you prefer, I'll give you another vineyard in exchange. But he answered, I will not give my vineyard to you. His wife Jezebel said to him, now is the time to show yourself king over Israel. Rise and eat something and be cheerful. I will get the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite for you. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal, and sent the letters to the elders and the nobles who lived in the same town with Naboth. And the letters She wrote as follows: proclaim a fast and seat Naboth at the front of the assembly, and seat two scoundrels opposite him, and let them testify against him. Ye have reviled Elohim and king. Then take him out and stone him to death. His townsmen, the elders, and nobles. His townsmen, the elders and nobles who lived in his town, did as Jezebel had instructed them. Just as was written in the letter she had sent them, they proclaimed the fast and seated Naboth at the front of the assembly. Then the two scoundrels came and sat down opposite him, and the scoundrels testified against Naboth publicly as follows: Naboth has reviled Elohim and king. Then they took him outside the town and stoned him to death. Word was sent to Jezebel: Naboth has been stoned to death. As soon as Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned to death, she said to Ahab, go and take possession of the vineyard which Naboth the Jezreelite refused to sell you for money. For Naboth is no longer alive, he is dead. When Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, Ahab set out for the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite to take possession of it. Then the word of our Father in heaven came to Elijah the Tishbite: go down and confront King Ahab of Israel, who resides in Samaria. He is now in Naboth's vineyard. He has gone down there to take possession of it. Say to him, thus said our Father in heaven, would you murder and take possession? Thus said our Father in heaven, in the very place where the dogs lapped of Naboth's blood, the dogs will lap of your blood too. Ahab said to Elijah, so you have found me, my enemy? Yes, I have found you, he replied, because you have committed yourself to doing what is evil in the sight of our Father in heaven. I will bring disaster upon you. I will make a clean sweep of you. I will cut off from Israel every male belonging to Ahab, bond and free. And I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, son of Ahiah, because of the provocation you have caused by leading Israel to sin. And our Father in heaven has also spoken concerning Jezebel. The dog shall devour Jezebel in the field of Jezreel. All of Ahab's line who die in the town shall be devoured by dogs, and all who die in the open country shall be devoured by the birds of the sky. Indeed, there never was anyone like Ahab who committed himself to doing what was displeasing to our Father in heaven. At the instigation of his wife Jezebel, he acted most abominably, straying after the fetishes, just like the Amorites whom our Father in heaven had dispossessed before the Israelites. When Ahab heard these words, he rent his clothes and put sackcloth on his body. He fasted and lay in sackcloth and walked about subdued. Then the word of our Father in heaven came to Elijah the Tishbite: have you seen how Ahab has humbled himself before me? Because he has humbled himself before me, I will not bring the disaster in his lifetime. I will bring the disaster upon his house in his son's time. Wow. There was a lull of 3 years with no war between Aram and Israel. In the third year, King Jehoshaphat of Yehuda came to visit the king of Israel. The king of Israel said to his courtiers, you know that Ramoth Gilead belongs to us, and yet we do nothing to recover it from the hands of the king of Aram. And he said to Jehoshaphat, will you come with me to battle at Ramoth Gilead? Jehoshaphat answered the king of Israel, I will do what you do. I will do what you do. My troops shall be your troops. My horses shall be your horses. But Jehoshaphat said further to the king of Israel, please first inquire of our Father in heaven. So the king of Israel gathered the prophets, about 400 men, and asked them, shall I march upon Ramoth Gilead for battle, or shall I not march? They said, and our Father in heaven will deliver it into your majesty's hands. Then Jehoshaphat asked, isn't there another prophet of our Father in heaven here through whom we can acquire? And the king of Israel answered Jehoshaphat, there is one more man through whom we can acquire of our Father in heaven, but I hate him because he never prophesies anything good for me, but only misfortune. Micaiah, son of Imlah. But King Jehoshaphat said, don't say that, your majesty. So the king of Israel summoned an officer and said, bring Micaiah, son of Imlah, at once. The king of Israel and King Jehoshaphat of Yehuda were seated on their thrones, arrayed in their robes, on the threshing floor at the entrance of the gate of Samaria, and all the prophets were prophesying before them. Zedekiah, son of Chenana, had provided himself with iron horns, and he said, thus said our Father in heaven, with these you shall gore the Arameans till you make an end of them. And all the other prophets were prophesying similarly. March upon Ramoth Gilead and triumph. Our Father in heaven will deliver it into your majesty's hands. The messenger who had gone to summon Micaiah said to him, look, the words of the prophets are with one accord favorable to the king. Let your word be like that of the rest of them. Speak a favorable word, as our Father in heaven lives. Micaiah answered, I will speak only what our Father in heaven tells me. When he came before the king said to him, Micaiah, shall we march upon Ramoth Gilead for battle, or shall we not? He answered, a march in triumph. Our Father in heaven will deliver it into your majesty's hands. The king said to him, how many times must I adjure you to tell me nothing but the truth in the name of our Father in heaven? Then he said, I saw Israel scattered over the hills like sheep without a shepherd. And our Father in heaven said, there has these have no master. Let everyone return to his home in safety. Then I tell you, said the king of Israel to Jehoshaphat, that he would not prophesy good fortune for me, but only misfortune. But Micaiah said, I call upon you to hear the word of our Father in heaven. I saw our Father in heaven seated upon his throne with all the hosts of heaven standing in attendance to the right and to the left of him. Our Father in heaven asked, who will entice Ahab so that he will march and fall at Ramoth Gilead? Then one said thus, and another said thus, until a certain spirit came forward and stood before our Father in heaven and said, I will entice him. How? Our Father in heaven asked him, and he replied, I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, you will entice and you will prevail. Go out and do it. So our Father in heaven has put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these prophets of yours. For our Father in heaven has decreed disaster upon you. Thereupon Zedekiah son of Cheniah stepped up and struck Micaiah on the cheek and demanded, which way did the spirit of our Father never pass from me to speak with you? And Micaiah replied, you'll find out on the day when you tried to hide in the innermost room. Then the king of Israel said, take Micaiah and turn him over to Amon, the city's governor, and to Prince Joash, and say the king's orders are, put this fellow in prison and let his face be scant bread and scant water until I come home safe. To which Micaiah retorted, if you ever come home safe, our Father in heaven has not spoken through me. He said further, listen, all you people. So the king of Israel and King Jehoshaphat of Yehuda marched upon Ramoth Gilead. The king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, disguise yourself and go into the battle. But you wear your robes. So the king of Israel went into the battle disguised, and the king of Aram had instructed his 32 chariots. Officers, don't attack anyone smaller critics except the king of Israel. So when the chariot officers saw Jehoshaphat, whom they took for the king of Israel, they turned upon him to attack him, and Jehoshaphat cried out. And when the chariot officers became aware that he was not the king of Israel, they turned back from pursuing him. Then a man drew his bow at random, and he hit the king of Israel between the plates of the armor, and he said to his charioteer, turn the horses around and get me behind the lines. I'm wounded. The battle raged all day long, and the king remained propped up in the chariot facing around. The blood from the wound ran down into the hollow of the chariot, and at dusk he died. As the sun was going down, a shout went through the army, every man to his own town, every man to his own district. So the king died and was brought to Samaria. They buried the king of Samaria, and they flushed out the chariot at the pool of Samaria. Thus the dogs lapped up his blood, and the wars bathed in it. Bathed in it in accordance with the word that our Father in heaven has spoken. The other events of Ahab's reign and all his actions, the ivory palace that he built and all the towns that he fortified are all recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Ahab slept with his fathers, and his son Ahaziah succeeded him as king. Jehoshaphat son of Ahasa had become king of Yehuda in the 4th year of King Ahab of Israel. Jehoshaphat was 35 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 25 years. His mother's name was Azubah, daughter of Shilai. He followed closely the course of his father Asa and did not deviate from it, doing what was pleasing to we can turn the page, family. Doing what was pleasing to our Father in heaven. However, the shrines did not cease to function. The people still sacrificed and offered at the shrines. And further, Jehoshaphat submitted to the king of Israel. As for the other events of Jehoshaphat's reign and the valor he displayed in battle, they are recorded in the annals of the kings of Yehuda. He also stamped out the remaining male prostitutes who had survived in the land from the time of his father Asa. There was no king in Edom. A viceroy acted as king. Jehoshaphat constructed Tarshish ships to sail to Ophir for gold, but he did not sail because the ships were wrecked at Azian Geber. Then Ahijah, son of Ahab, proposed to Jehoshaphat, let my servants sail on the ships with your servants. But Jehoshaphat would not agree. Jehoshaphat slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of his father David, and his son Jeroboam succeeded him as king. Meanwhile, Ahaziah, son of Ahab, had become king of Israel in Samaria in the 17th year of King Jehoshaphat of Yehuda. He reigned over Israel 2 years. He did what was displeasing to our Father in heaven, following in the footsteps of his father and his mother, and in those of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who had caused Israel to sin. He worshipped Baal and bowed down to him. He vexed our Father in heaven, the Elohim of Israel, just as his father had done. Amen. Well, we're on 2 Kings now, 2 Kings 1. We got Father and Son who's been with us. Yeah, it was a good read, you know. I love reading the scriptures. I love reading the Bible. It always keeps me focused, keeps me right. Always got to get this in before you get your workout in, before you do anything else in front of your day period, even if it's 5 minutes of this, 2 minutes of this, 2 seconds of this. Even if you just open it up and boom, you see one word, you got to get this in before anything else. All praise to our Father, the Son, and the Spirit. Hey, you are judged by your works. You're judged by your fruit. Hey, a bad fruit can't produce good fruit, and a good fruit can't produce bad fruit. If I was a bad fruit, I couldn't even read the Bible. Bad fruit can't read the Bible. Good fruit read the Bible. Yeah, Father, Son, and Spirit with us. Amen.